Respected, when the man you have been waiting on finally sends that message, do not let your emotions answer before your wisdom does. Because sometimes the text you have been praying for is not an invitation to run back. Sometimes it is a test to see whether you have finally learned your worth. You know that feeling. Your phone lights up, and for a second, everything stops. You see his name, the same name you tried not to think about, the same person you convinced yourself you were finally getting over. And suddenly, all those emotions you buried come rushing back. You start asking yourself, what should I say? Should I answer immediately? Should I pretend I do not care? Should I tell him how much he hurt me? Should I ask why he disappeared? Should I make him jealous? Should I leave him on read? And listen to me carefully. The most powerful response is not the one that makes him jealous. It is not the one that makes him chase you out of fear. And it is not the one that proves you have been sitting around waiting for him. The most powerful response is the one that proves you have grown. Because when somebody walks away from you, ignores you, becomes distant, or disappears without giving you the respect you deserve, you have two choices. You can spend your energy trying to make them understand your value, or you can become so secure in your own value that you no longer need them to understand it. And that is where your power begins. Maybe he texted you, hey, how have you been? Maybe he said, I miss you. Maybe he sent something casual, like, what are you doing? Or maybe he came back after weeks of silence with the simplest message in the world. Hey, just one word. But that one word can create 1,000 emotions inside you because you remember everything. You remember the conversations. You remember the nights you waited. You remember checking your phone and seeing nothing. You remember wondering whether you did something wrong. You remember the moment you realized that someone who once made you feel important had suddenly made you feel invisible. And now he is back. But before you answer, I want you to understand something. His message does not erase his absence. His I miss you does not automatically repair the hurt. His sudden interest does not prove that he has changed. And his return does not mean you are required to give him access to you again. Sometimes people come back because they genuinely realize what they lost. Sometimes they come back because they are lonely. Sometimes they come back because the person they thought would replace you did not give them what you gave them. Sometimes they come back because they finally understand your value. And sometimes they come back simply because they want to know whether the door is still open. Your job is not to figure out which one it is by guessing. Your job is to watch what he does next. That is the difference between emotional maturity and emotional desperation. When you are desperate, you listen to words. When you are mature, you watch patterns. Because anybody can say, I miss you. Anybody can say, I have been thinking about you. Anybody can say, I made a mistake. But change is not a sentence, change is behavior. So if he finally texts you back, do not immediately pour your heart into that conversation. Do not send him 3 paragraphs explaining everything you have felt since the day he disappeared. Do not tell him how many nights you cried. Do not tell him how often you checked your phone. Do not give him the entire story of your emotional journey in the first 5 minutes. Not because your feelings do not matter. They matter deeply. But because your feelings deserve to be shared with someone who has demonstrated that they can handle them responsibly. And there is another reason. You need to see what he actually wants. So if he sends you something simple like, hey, how are you? You do not need to punish him. You do not need to play games. You do not need to pretend that you are some cold person who never cared. You can simply say, I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too. That is it. Simple, calm, respectful. You are not chasing. You are not attacking. You are not begging. You are not pretending. You are simply allowing the conversation to reveal itself. And if he really wants to talk, let him talk. If he really has something meaningful to say, let him say it. If he wants to explain his absence, let him explain. You do not have to drag the truth out of him. A grown man who understands what he wants will eventually communicate it. And if he does not communicate it, that is information too. Sometimes silence answers questions that words never could. Think about your life for a moment. How many times have you accepted a person's potential instead of their behavior? How many times have you said, I know he cares about me, while his actions were showing you something completely different? How many times have you made excuses for someone because you love the person you believed they could become? That is where many good hearts get hurt. They fall in love with potential. They fall in love with memories. They fall in love with the version of someone that existed in the beginning. And then they spend months trying to get that person back. But you cannot build a future with somebody's past. You have to look at who they are today. So when he finally texts you, do not ask yourself only, do I still love him? Ask yourself a more important question. Has he become someone I can trust again? Because love without trust becomes anxiety. Love without consistency becomes confusion. Love without respect becomes emotional exhaustion. And you deserve more than a relationship that keeps you guessing. Now, maybe you are thinking, but what if I still want him? Then be honest with yourself. Wanting someone does not make you weak. Missing someone does not make you foolish. Loving someone does not mean you have lost your dignity. You can still love somebody and choose not to chase them. You can still miss somebody and refuse to abandon yourself for them. You can still hope they have changed while requiring them to prove it. That is emotional strength. You do not have to become bitter to become strong. You do not have to hate him to move forward. You do not have to pretend you never cared. You simply have to stop allowing your feelings to make decisions that your wisdom should be making. Because here is the truth. If he truly wants another chance, you will not have to convince him to give it to you. He will show up. He will communicate. He will take responsibility. He will understand that your trust is not something he can demand back just because he finally decided to return. And you should not be afraid to let him earn his way back into your life. Let him demonstrate consistency. Let him demonstrate patience. Let him demonstrate maturity. Let him demonstrate that this time he is not just coming back because he misses the comfort you provided. He is coming back because he is ready to become the kind of person who deserves the love you gave him. And if he is not, then let him go. Because sometimes the text you were waiting for arrives after you have already become the person who no longer needs it. And that is not a tragedy. That is growth. You spent so much time wondering whether he would come back. But maybe the real question was never whether he would return. Maybe the real question was whether you would still be waiting in the same emotional place when he did. And if you have grown, the answer is no, you are not the same person he left you learn. You cried, you healed, you discovered parts of yourself that you did not know existed. And now, if he comes knocking on the door of your life, he is not meeting the woman he walked away from. He is meeting someone who finally understands that love should add peace to her life, not constantly take it away. So answer if you want to answer, but answer from peace. Answer from self-respect. Answer from clarity. And most importantly, do not let one message make you forget an entire pattern, because the real story is not what he texts you tonight. The real story is what he does after you respond. And that is where you need to pay attention. Now, let me tell you something that most people do not understand when someone finally comes back. The hardest part is not receiving the message. The hardest part is controlling what that message awakens inside you. Because one text can bring back a whole relationship in your mind. You start remembering the good mornings, the late night conversations, the laughter, the moments when you felt safe in his arms, the promises he made, the future you imagined. And suddenly you are not responding to the man who texted you today. You are responding to the memory of the man you loved yesterday that is dangerous, because memories are emotional photographs. They capture one moment, but they do not always show the entire story. You remember how good he made you feel when things were good, but you must also remember how you felt when he disappeared. You must remember the confusion. You must remember the unanswered questions. You must remember how many times you tried to understand what was happening while he gave you very little to understand. You must remember how often you were left wondering where you stood. Not because you should hold a grudge, but because healing requires honesty. You cannot make a wise decision using only the beautiful parts of the story. You have to look at the whole story. And this is where your response becomes important. When he texts you, you do not have to immediately ask, "Do you still love me?" You do not have to ask, "Why did you leave?" You do not have to ask, "Did you miss me?" You can allow him to reveal his intention. There is power in not rushing. There is power in letting a conversation breathe. Because when you stop trying to control the outcome, you start seeing the truth. If he says, "I've been thinking about you lately," you can simply say, "I appreciate you telling me that." Then stop. Let him continue. If he says, "I miss what we had," you can say, "I understand. We shared some meaningful moments." And then stop. Do not immediately say, "I miss you too." Maybe you do, but you do not need to hand him your heart before you know what he plans to do with it. There is a difference between being emotionally honest and being emotionally available to someone who has not yet earned that access. And I want you to understand this because it can change the way you approach every relationship in your life. Your heart is valuable. Stop treating access to it like it is free, not because you should become cold, but because you should become intentional. When someone has already shown you that they can walk away without explanation, they should not automatically receive the same version of you when they return. They should receive the opportunity to rebuild trust. That is different. You are not punishing them. You are protecting the progress you made. Think about a house that was damaged by a storm. You do not walk back inside just because the rain stopped. You inspect the roof. You check the foundation. You make sure the structure is safe. Then you decide whether you can live there again. Your heart deserves the same care. And maybe he really has changed. Maybe the time apart forced him to look at himself. Maybe losing you showed him what he took for granted. Maybe he finally realized that the love you gave him was not ordinary. If that is true, you do not need to reject him simply because you were hurt. But you also do not need to accept him simply because you were loved once. Let his actions tell you who he is now. That is maturity. You see, one of the biggest mistakes people make after heartbreak is believing that forgiveness means immediate access. It does not. You can forgive someone and still require boundaries. You can forgive someone and still move slowly. You can forgive someone and still say, "I need to see consistency before I trust this again." That is not bitterness. That is wisdom. And if he is genuine, he will understand. A person who truly wants to rebuild something with you will not become angry because you need time. They will not say, "If you loved me, you would trust me immediately." No. They will understand that trust is rebuilt through repetition. They will show up when they say they will. They will communicate when something is wrong. They will stop disappearing. They will stop making you question where you stand. They will not expect you to forget the past. They will help you create a new present. And that is the difference between somebody who misses your presence and somebody who values your presence. Anybody can miss you. Not everybody knows how to value you. Missing you is an emotion. Valuing you is a decision. And decisions show up in behavior. Maybe he says, "I want to see you." Do not immediately start planning your future together. You can simply say, we can talk about that. What did you have in mind? And now you are making him communicate. You are not carrying the whole conversation. You are not doing all the emotional work. You are giving him room to show his intentions, because if he has truly changed, he will not be afraid of clarity. If he is only lonely, clarity will expose it. If he is only bored, clarity will expose it. If he only wants attention, clarity will expose it. And if he genuinely wants to rebuild something, clarity will give him the opportunity to demonstrate that. You do not need tricks. You do not need manipulation. You do not need to make him jealous. You do not need to post pictures just to make him wonder who you are with. You do not need to intentionally delay your response for exactly 3 hours because somebody on the internet told you that makes a man chase harder. You are not playing chess. You are dealing with a human being, and you should never build a relationship around psychological games. If you want to respond, respond when you are calm. If you need time, take time. If you are not ready, say that. If you want to talk, talk. But do not betray yourself just because you are afraid he might leave again. Because if being honest causes him to leave, then his return was never stable enough to begin with. You have to understand something. The goal is not to get him back. The goal is to find out whether getting him back is actually good for you. Those are two completely different goals. When your goal is simply to get him back, you will accept almost anything. You will overlook inconsistencies. You will make excuses. You will ignore your intuition. You will accept crumbs because you are afraid the plate might disappear. But when your goal is to find out whether this person belongs in your future, you start asking better questions. Does he respect me? Does he communicate? Does he take accountability? Does he make me feel emotionally safe? Does he bring peace into my life? Does he keep his word? Does he make an effort even when things are not convenient? Does he understand that love is not just chemistry, because chemistry can make you fall, character determines whether you can stay. And maybe this is the lesson you were supposed to learn from the whole experience. Maybe you were never supposed to become better at chasing. Maybe you were supposed to become better at choosing yourself, choosing peace, choosing people who choose you consistently, choosing relationships that do not require you to constantly prove your worth. Because the right person does not need to be convinced that you matter. They may make mistakes. They may have bad days. They may struggle to communicate sometimes. But there will be a pattern of effort. There will be accountability. There will be a desire to make things right. And that is what you should look for. Not perfection, consistency. So if he texts you tonight, remember this: you do not owe him the old version of yourself. You do not owe him immediate forgiveness. You do not owe him immediate trust. You do not owe him a second chance. But if you still have love in your heart and you believe there may be something worth exploring, you can give him an opportunity to show you who he has become, slowly, wisely, with your eyes open. Because sometimes people really do change, and sometimes the person who walks away comes back with a completely different understanding of what they lost. But you will never know which one he is until you stop listening only to what he says and start watching what he consistently does. And when you finally understand that, you stop being afraid of his next move. Because whether he stays or goes, you know you will be okay. And that is when you become powerful. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped abandoning yourself for the sake of being chosen. Now here is where everything changes. Because after you have responded calmly, after you have stopped chasing, after you have given him the space to explain himself, you are going to discover something very important. You are going to discover whether he missed you or whether he missed having access to you. And those two things are not the same. A man can miss your attention without being ready for commitment. He can miss your affection without being ready to change. He can miss the comfort you gave him without understanding the responsibility that comes with loving you. That is why you cannot let his emotions become your evidence. Let his consistency become your evidence. Maybe he tells you, I know I messed up. That sounds good. But then ask yourself, does he understand how he messed up? Because there is a difference between saying, I made a mistake, and saying, I understand how my actions affected you and I should have handled things differently. The second one shows reflection. The first one may simply be regret. And regret is not always transformation. Sometimes people regret losing you without regretting the behavior that caused them to lose you. That is why you have to pay attention. If he says he wants another chance, do not immediately ask, when can we get back together? Ask yourself, what would be different this time? That question can change everything. Because if nothing is different, why would the outcome be different? If he still communicates the same way, disappears the same way, avoids difficult conversations the same way, and gives effort only when he fears losing you, then you are not starting a new relationship. You are restarting an old cycle, and you have already lived that cycle. You already know where it leads. You cannot keep walking through the same door and then complain that you keep ending up in the same room. At some point, you have to change the pattern. And changing the pattern may mean slowing down. It may mean saying, I am open to talking, but I do not want to rush into anything. That sentence carries maturity. It says, I'm not shutting you out, but I'm not abandoning myself either. And if he is serious, he will respect that. If he is not serious, he will become impatient. And his impatience will tell you everything you need to know. Because someone who genuinely wants to rebuild your trust understands that healing takes time. They do not demand immediate access to the person they once hurt. They earn it day by day, conversation by conversation, action by action. And maybe you need to hear this today. You are allowed to make someone earn your trust again. You are allowed to say, I need consistency. You are allowed to say, I need honesty. You are allowed to say, I cannot go through the same pain again. You are allowed to protect your peace, and you should never feel guilty for that. There was a time when you probably thought love meant giving everything, giving your time, giving your energy, giving your patience, giving endless chances. Given explanations for behavior you did not understand. But mature love teaches you something different. Love does not require you to disappear inside another person. You should be able to love someone and still recognize yourself. You should be able to care about someone and still have boundaries. You should be able to forgive someone without giving them permission to hurt you again. That is strength. And if you are listening to this because his name just appeared on your phone, take a breath before you respond. You do not have to answer from excitement. You do not have to answer from anger. You do not have to answer from fear. Answer from the person you have become. Maybe the old version of you would have responded immediately with, oh my God, I missed you so much. Where have you been? But the new version of you might simply say, good to hear from you. What made you reach out? That is not rude, that is not cold, that is clarity. You are giving him the opportunity to explain why he is there. And then listen, really listen. Do not listen only for the words you want to hear. Listen for accountability. And listen for intention, listen for responsibility. Listen for whether he understands the impact of his absence. And most importantly, listen to whether his future promises are supported by realistic actions. Because words are easy when emotions are high. But life happens after the conversation ends. The real test begins on an ordinary Tuesday, when nobody is romantic, when nobody is afraid of losing anybody, when there is no excitement, when the conversation is not new anymore. That is where consistency lives. And that is where real love proves itself. You might be tempted to ask him, why did you come back now? And honestly, that can be a fair question. But sometimes his answer will not matter as much as what he does next. He may say he realized he made a mistake. Okay, show me. He may say he cannot stop thinking about you. Okay, show me. He may say you are the only woman he wants. Okay, show me. Not because you are playing games, because you have learned that promises without action are just emotional decoration. You do not need another beautiful speech. You need evidence. And here's another thing. Do not let his return make you feel like you finally won. You did not win because he came back. You won when you stopped needing him to come back. That is the victory. Because when you can look at his message without losing your balance, you have grown. When you can talk to him without forgetting yourself, you have grown. When you can say yes without fear and no without guilt, you have grown. When you can walk away if the situation does not serve you, you have grown. That is what healing looks like. Healing does not always mean you stop loving someone. Sometimes healing means you finally understand that loving someone does not require you to accept everything from them. And if he is meant to be part of your future, he will meet you at the level of the person you have become. He will not ask you to shrink back into the person who tolerated everything. He will respect the boundaries that your pain taught you to create. He will understand that trust is precious, and he will not ask you to forget. He will help you feel safe enough that eventually you do not have to remember the hurt every time you look at him. That is what rebuilding means. But if he comes back with the same confusion, the same mixed signals, the same disappearing acts, the same excuses, and the same emotional inconsistency, then you have your answer. You do not need another conversation. You do not need another sign. You do not need another painful lesson. You can simply say, I wish you well, but I am choosing peace, and walk away. Because sometimes the strongest response to a returning person is not another chance. Sometimes it is closure, not angry closure, not dramatic closure, peaceful closure, the kind where you can finally say, I loved you, I wanted it to work. I hoped you would change, but I cannot build my future around hope anymore. I need reality. And that is a powerful place to stand. So when he finally texts you back, remember the message is not the destination. It is only the beginning of the conversation. The question is not, what can I say to make him stay? The question is, what do I need to know before I decide whether he deserves a place in my life? And that shift changes everything, because you are no longer trying to be chosen. You are choosing. You are no longer waiting for somebody to decide your worth. You know your worth. You are no longer asking, will he come back? You are asking, if he comes back, is he coming back differently? And that is the question that can save you from repeating the same heartbreak. So let him talk. Let him explain. Let him show you. Do not rush. Do not chase. Do not manipulate. Do not pretend you do not care. Just stand firmly in who you are now. Because if he truly belongs in your life, you will not have to destroy your peace to keep him there. And if he does not belong in your life, losing him again will not destroy you. It will simply confirm what your healing was trying to teach you all along. You are not here to convince someone to love you correctly. You are here to build a life where love, respect, consistency, and peace can exist together. And when you understand that, his text stops being the most important thing that happened to you. Your growth becomes the most important thing. And now, before you answer that message, I want you to remember one final thing. His text is not your second chance. Your healing is your second chance. The opportunity to choose differently is your second chance. The opportunity to stop chasing people who make you question your value is your second chance. Maybe you waited for this moment for weeks. Maybe you imagined what you would say when he finally came back. Maybe you promised yourself that if he ever texted again, you would finally tell him everything you had been holding inside. But now that the moment is here, do not let emotion take control. Take a breath. Look at the message. Look at your life. Look at how far you have come. And remember who you were before he texted. You were still valuable. You were still worthy. You were still capable of being loved. You were still becoming the person you were meant to become. His message did not create your value, and his silence never destroyed it. So if you decide to respond, respond with peace. You can say, it's good to hear from you. I'm open to talking, but I'm not interested in going back to the same patterns. If you're reaching out because you genuinely want to rebuild something, I'm willing to listen. That is enough. No begging, no revenge, no emotional explosion, no pretending, just truth. And then let his actions answer the rest. If he shows consistency, watch it. If he shows accountability, recognize it. If he shows genuine effort, give it time. But if he returns only when he is lonely, disappears when he feels secure, and comes back whenever he wants attention, do not confuse his returning with his changing. You have already learned that lesson. And you do not need to learn it twice, because the woman who once waited desperately for his message is not the woman standing here today. She has grown. She understands now that love is not supposed to feel like begging for someone's attention. She understands that affection without consistency creates confusion. She understands that chemistry cannot compensate for a lack of character. And most importantly, she understands that she can love someone deeply without losing herself completely. So if he comes back, let him meet the healed version of you. Let him meet the woman who knows what she wants. Let him meet the woman who can forgive without forgetting the lesson. Let him meet the woman who does not need to chase. And if he cannot handle that woman, then he was never ready for the woman you were becoming. Never be afraid of losing someone because you finally started respecting yourself. The right person will not punish you for having boundaries. The right person will not make you feel guilty for needing consistency. The right person will not ask you to accept less just because they are finally ready to offer something. And if he is truly meant to walk beside you, he will understand that your heart is not a revolving door. It is a home, and people who want to live there should know how to take care of it. So answer him if your heart wants to, but do not answer because you are afraid he might disappear again. Do not answer because you need validation. Do not answer because you want to prove that you still matter to him. Answer only when you can do it without abandoning yourself. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have is the relationship you have with yourself. And once you learn to protect your peace, you stop begging people to stay. You stop chasing explanations. You stop accepting half love. You stop confusing attention with affection. You stop calling inconsistency potential. You stop allowing someone else's uncertainty to become your insecurity. And you finally understand something that can change your entire life. If somebody wants you, let them show you. If somebody values you, let them demonstrate it. If somebody loves you, let their actions make you feel safe. You do not have to convince them. You do not have to chase them. You do not have to perform for them. You simply have to remain true to yourself. So when that phone lights up again, remember this. Do not ask, how do I make him stay? Ask, does the person standing in front of me deserve the woman I have become? That is the question. And whatever the answer is, have the courage to live by it. Because sometimes the greatest love story is not the one where he comes back. Sometimes the greatest love story is the one where you finally come back to yourself. And if he comes back with maturity, honesty, consistency, and genuine love, perhaps there is something beautiful worth rebuilding. But if he comes back with the same behavior that broke your heart, have enough courage to close the door peacefully. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself too. You do not need revenge. You do not need to make him regret losing you. Your peace is enough. Your growth is enough. Your life moving forward is enough. And one day you will look back at the person you were when you desperately waited for that text, and you will smile because you will realize that you were never waiting for him to choose you. You were waiting to learn how to choose yourself, and that was the message you were really waiting for all along. So take your time, Protect your heart, watch the actions, trust your wisdom, and never forget your worth. Because when you know who you are, a text message can no longer determine how you feel about yourself. Whether he stays or leaves, you remain whole. Whether he apologizes or never does, you continue healing. Whether he becomes the person you hoped he would become or remains exactly who he was, you keep moving forward. That is freedom. That is maturity. That is strength. And that is what happens when you stop waiting for somebody else to give you the closure, love, and validation that you finally learned to give yourself. So yes, he finally texted you back. Now the question is no longer what should you say to him. The real question is what are you going to say to yourself? And the first hope, your answer is simple. I will never abandon myself again just to keep someone else. Because the moment you make that promise to yourself, you become impossible to break in the same way twice. And that is when your story changes forever.